Many years ago, at the beginning of the 20th century, a German animator by the name of Lotte Reiniger set out to animate a story using elements from the Arabian Nights. With the help of some famous animators of the day, among them Walter Ruttmann, Bertold Bartosch, and Carl Koch, Reiniger created The Adventures of Prince Achmed. The film was in production for about 3 years, premiering in Germany on September 3, 1926. At 65 minutes long, it was one of the very first feature-length animated films and is regarded today as a masterful classic. I'm glad that this film is still around to be enjoyed and studied, as it was almost lost from the world during World War II. In 1945, most of the existing prints of the film were destroyed during the Battle of Berlin. But there were a few surviving prints that were located outside of Germany, which allowed for the film to be successfully restored. So let's start up some discussion to celebrate this film's survival and its upcoming 90th birthday. The story is basically this. An evil magician tricks Prince Achmed into mounting a flying horse, leading the prince on a series of adventures. It's very much a conventional fairy tale. We have our main character, their love interest, the villain, and even a magical ally for the main character. Most of the characters are static and flat, save for Achmed and Peri Banu, whose relationship is a major driving force in the story. Fittingly, Achmed has the most development. He begins as a fearless in the foolish sense, and somewhat selfish young man, as seen in the first part of his journey. He lands at and sneaks into an unfamiliar palace and accidentally wakes up a room full of women, then begins to make out with each of them. I called him fearless in the foolish sense because the moment things begin to go awry, he panics and runs away. As for the selfish part, when Achmed first meets Peri Banu, he essentially falls in love with her at first sight and chases her around, begging him to come home with him. He even goes so far as to abduct her. But while he let his desire get the better of him, he takes her flying costume with him as well. So in the next scene, he gives it back to her, proving that he was truly willing to let her go and subsequently earned her trust. I feel this development was kind of abrupt, but it shows how Achmed had some sense of integrity in spite of his shortcomings. Plus, it shows how Achmed's feelings towards her goes from infatuation to genuine affection. When the magician kidnaps Peri Banu and sells her off to the Emperor of China as a concubine, Achmed goes out of his way to rescue her from being married to the Emperor's underling, then puts his life on the line to rescue her once more by doing battle with a horde of demons. The story moves along at a steady pace and has its exciting and funny moments, among them the climactic battle between our heroes and a horde of demons, and the scene of the women fighting over Achmed. The copy of the film I have has all the dialogue in its native German, and I don't know if there's any alternate language version. This might make certain parts of the story confusing, but even if you don't understand German, the story isn't very hard to follow for reasons I'll get into in a moment. Now let's talk a little about the soundtrack. On its own, a lot of the soundtrack may sound like a long stream of brief, repetitive beats. But when combined with the visuals of the film, it doesn't feel that way at all. It glides along with the story and slowly evolves as the film progresses. Certain parts of the score are especially interesting. For instance, during this scene, there's a storm of bells ringing that becomes more wild and intense as the scene goes on, reflecting how the situation goes from lively to out of control. Then there's the low, monstrous droning that plays when Achmed reaches the lair of the demons. It really helps amplify how dangerous the place is, and kinda does sound like a monster roaring. The only time the soundtrack really sounded out of place was during this scene, which for some reason has a sci-fi vibe to it. Just for clarification, the restored version of the film has a redone version of the original score, hence why you'll hear a few modern sounding instruments in this 1920s film. The film's greatest strengths lie in the animation itself. It's presented in Reiniger's signature silhouette style, where all the characters, props, and backdrops are, well, silhouettes. They were all crafted from cardboard and had to be painstakingly hand-animated frame by frame. The incredible amount of effort put into the animation definitely shines through. Characters and settings alike boast exquisite detailing. Had the detailing been underdone, this film would have been pretty boring to look at. The only color in the film may be the simple single-colored backdrops, but they often help set the mood of a scene and set the settings apart from one another. For instance, blue is often used for quiet or solitary settings, and orange is often used for dangerous settings and situations. The puppets have really convincing movement that gives them a sense of weight as well as personality. Like any good animation, it follows the basic principles of animation, such as easing, anticipation, and exaggeration. Reiniger had spent plenty of time studying both human and animal movements during the film's production to make sure the animation would be believable. It was certainly worth it. It couldn't be more evident here that body movements play an important role in making compelling animation, especially in one that contains no spoken dialogue. Most of the puppets don't have distinct facial features, so they often have exaggerated movements to indicate joy, distress, and so on. So despite all the dialogue being in German, the clear animation gives you a good idea of what's happening. Also of note, the film's production resulted in the creation of the first multi-plane camera, which allowed the animators to give scenes a more realistic sense of depth. You'll notice that the film contains successful examples of parallax, which is the effect where objects that are farther from the camera move more slowly than those closer to it. Before the multi-plane camera, this effect was exceedingly difficult for traditional animators to pull off. Speaking of perspective, the filmmakers did an excellent job at manipulating perspective. For certain scenes, they created multiple puppets and backgrounds of different scales to achieve close-ups and distance shots while compensating for their limited work area. The multiplane camera also enabled the animators to experiment with new kinds of visual effects. For instance, Walter Ruttmann used wax for the summoning of the magical horse, and Bertold Bartosz made starry skies and ocean waves out of soap, sand, and transparent paper. So not only was this film remarkable for being one of the first feature-length animations, it was also technologically innovative. This mesmerizing relic of the early animation industry is a fascinating watch. I can't attest to its status as a masterpiece, as I'm only a student, not an expert, but I can say for certain that The Adventures of Prince Achmed was an innovative creation and is definitely worth a watch. And that concludes this episode of Animate Ball. Thanks for watching! If you'd like to stay up to date with all things Animate Ball, click that little red button beneath the video that says subscribe. Feel free to discuss the animation in the comments, but please try to keep it civil. It makes the experience better for everyone. If you know of any interesting or more obscure animated works that you think would be worth discussing, don't hesitate to suggest any. Next time on Animate Ball.
The powers of the mind will always overcome violence.